You're listening to the SKYLIT Books podcast. We're an independent, general interest bookstore putting great reads in the hands of people in the Los Feliz neighborhood of Los Angeles. Hosted by resident Skylighters, we're here to bring you new and exciting author conversations, group reads, and bookseller chats. Happy listening. Hello, lovely listeners. Welcome back to the SKYLIT Books podcast. My name is Nat, and I'm your host today. We are so excited to welcome XC Atkins to talk about his new collection, The Desperado Days, and he will be in conversation with Chris L. Terry. I'm going to introduce you to them in just a second, and then we'll have a little reading and some conversation. XC Atkins is the author of The Desperado Days and Grace Street and Other Stories. He is an alumni of Virginia Commonwealth University. His work can be found in Akashic Books, Richmond Noir, Tusculum Review, Paper Darts, and many other magazines and journals. Atkins presently lives and bartends in Los Angeles. And he will be in conversation with Chris L. Terry, the author of the novel Black Card, about a mixed-race punk bassist with a Black imaginary friend. NPR called Black Card hilariously searing and listed it as one of the best books of 2019. Terry's debut novel, Zero Fade, was on the Best of 2013 list by Slate and Kirkus Reviews, and Terry was born in 1979 to a Black father and white mother. He lives in Los Angeles, where he teaches creative writing and is currently editing Black Punk Now, an anthology of Black punk writing and comics with Afropunk founder James Spooner. His recent writing has appeared in Pitchfork, Stereogum, Razor Cake, Very Smart Brothers, The Root, Catapult, and the LA Land magazine. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you.
And XC, do you want to start us off by reading a little something?
Sure. Right. So this is a story that's inside the Desperado Days. This book, of course, is published by Transfer Books out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. Albin Fisher runs this press. This was actually a story that was published with his magazine before it was included in the book. So I just wanted to preface it with that. And yeah, it's called A Cool Cucumber. I worked with this guy. He was a real nice guy. Fresh from out of town, tall, handsome, long blonde hair, a real babe magnet. He was married, weird for a young guy. A lot of us couldn't wait to see who she was. I guess we had big expectations. It wasn't fair, but most of us were pretty judgmental, jaded, still running around being assholes. Sometimes the new guy would give me rides to work. He wanted to fit in, and I took advantage of that the same way it had been done to me and all before me and all to come. He drove a used Civic hatchback, paint job chipping, muffler loud as fuck. I didn't care. I liked attention, especially if it was disruptive. My wife is coming in to eat tonight, the new guy told me. Fuck yeah. With who? Solo. We'll roll out the red carpet, baby. The staff got ready for the night. We went over the specials in detail and practiced pitches. Discussed specific guests with special needs, big parties, what time the pops would come, and our last reservation of the night. Tish gave a quick presentation on a new Loire Valley wine we'd added. The night came as furious as ever, and the team was tight. Completely prepared. We were like a pirate crew. Everyone was certain. Everyone knew the hit of the tide and how to roll with it. We all felt like killers. So even if we weren't best friends, we felt like we knew each other better than best friends in a different but still intimate way. Because, and I realized how dramatic it is to say it like this, it felt like our lives were on the line. The margin of error was so small. No one wanted to be the weak link. The weak link didn't last long here. We had to all be completely dependable. The money was the best some of us would ever make in our lives. That's why it was so damn hard to leave. My wife's at table 10, the new guy said giddily into my ear as I was putting my order in. I looked over. I sized her up quickly, like you do in our business. She checked out. Thin nose, black hair styled like she jumped straight out of a pinup calendar. A blouse that showed her arms plastered with tattoos and plenty of cleavage, but not in a distasteful way. But it was a lot. Yeah, the new guy was a certified stud, but she was something else, and she knew it. We were introduced. I took her hand and repeated my name. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Maybe that was the point. She was only shown the drink menu. The food was going to just be sent out. We did this often for people who came in to eat, usually only for people with big money. We'd sort of become known for it. The group would sit down and the spokesperson would say, "We know we're supposed to trust you. Here are some things we know we want. Here are some things we'd like to stay away from. Send us food until we tell you to stop." 9 times out of 10, we blow them out of the water. I could see the allure, the delight and surprise, decadence, and we were confident because we knew how good our product was. The size of the bill that would come out at the end could look like a month of rent. So it paid to have friends like us, or even better, a significant other, because we also had the power to cancel out the bill. We gave his wife the red carpet. Everyone came over to introduce themselves at some point, dropping off food, describing them in full and articulate detail. And she was a cool cucumber with every one of us, not snobby, just a touch of the ice queen. I didn't take it in any sort of bad way. She didn't owe me shit. A couple hours went by. The restaurant was slowly starting to chill out. She was ending like a champion. A seared sliver of foie gras on a warm ball of nigiri, assisted by a glass of sauternes. Bliss. Her eyes fluttered. Beautiful eyelashes. The moment in the Matrix where the program causes the tiny explosion between the woman's legs. I almost felt perverted for watching this exact moment with the guest, but it was a moment you wanted to relive as many times as possible while you were still on this green earth. I was at the bar picking up something when his wife was on her way out. They hugged at the door. She saw me over his shoulder. She gave me a cool nod and breezed out, light as a feather. "She have a good time?" I asked the new guy. Blew her mind. We've high-fived. I could tell how proud he was, and he ought to be. I was happy for him in a lot of ways. It was the end of the night, and we were finishing up doing our side work. We sat next to each other, polishing silverware. Joni was vacuuming at the end of the restaurant, a strangely comforting buzz. The sushi guys were cleaning their station, wrapping up the fish, wiping down their cutting boards. Mitch was behind the bar, taking inventory. A tranquility had settled over the restaurant. "How did y'all meet?" I asked the new guy. "I was visiting Seattle. That's where she was living at the time, working in a bar. I was in a hostel next door. We hit it off. I ended up staying there for weeks just to be around. I was probably pretty annoying at first, but she finally said yes to a date. Things kept growing. I persuaded her to travel to Hawaii with me somehow. That's where we got married." "That's crazy. Sounds like it happened fast." It did. I was surprised myself. I just didn't want anything else. Couldn't imagine being somewhere without her. I'm really lucky. There was a way he said it, how honest he was maybe, that made me feel real sad for him. I couldn't figure out why that was. So all I said was, "Geez, that's great, man." Another day, another dollar. We got through service. The new guy was really taking to it fast. He was a quick learner, which was really great in this environment. This wasn't a good place for someone to have to tell you something more than twice. Feel like grabbing a drink after work? I knew he'd say no. He wasn't really a drinker. He wasn't really a bar type either. He liked to go to the gym after work. He worked out a lot. He was sort of a health freak. He was very popular with the ladies who dined in the restaurant. He'd always be popular. "Nah, man. Thanks, though. You know me. Gotta hit the gym before the wife gets home." "She works this late?" "A lot more lately. New job." The manager came by and handed us our tips for the night. I took the large wad of cash and shoved it in my pocket without counting. I folded my polishing rag, standing up. I slapped the new guy on his broad back. "Have a good night, amigo." "You going out?" "Gotta howl, baby." "Go get 'em." I went to my bar. I probably went to this bar 5 nights out of the week. It wasn't on my side of town, but the truth was, I had no business being on my side of town in the first place, and all the neighbors knew it. I tried to make it so that I only slept over there, and a lot of nights I didn't even make it to do that. I wasn't doing a lot of good with all the money I was making, which of course would be something I'd regret for the rest of my life, but hey, can't take it with you, right? Why pay off some student loans when I could sit at the bar with a bunch of dipshits, drink Budweiser, and shout at people I'd never meet through a television screen? But the truth was, I was beginning to understand I was wasting my life. It was the same group of us almost every night, hunkered over the counter, and if any of us were ever missing, we were almost jealous. They had to be doing something important not to be here, right? It'd come to feel like we were just at another job, the job after the job. and none of us realized we could just go home. We could just do something else, sleep, save our money, build a shelf, write a book. I took a shot of whiskey. A couple walked into the bar. I knew both of them. Only one of them surprised me. The guy came up to me right away. He was a regular too, younger than me, a pretty enthusiastic fella. I liked him fine. We shook hands. Hey, bud, how you doing tonight? I'm doing, brother. I'm doing. I was looking past him to the girl. He must have picked up on that. Oh, this is my girlfriend. Wanda, this is Levy. Hi, Levy, Wanda said monotone. We shook hands. This time, she did say her name, different than before. Of course, this was a different kind of meeting than before, and we both knew it. This time I was quiet. I just stared at her. She bit her full ruby lip ever so slightly. You just hanging out tonight, Lev? Yeah, man, you see it. Word. Well, we're gonna grab a drink. Maybe we'll join you. Yeah, sure, Haas. They went to the middle of the bar where Crow was making some drinks. My friend stood there chatting with him. Wanda looked back at me and gave me that cool nod once again. I left a little while later. They were outside smoking. I didn't act rushed or anything. I said adios to them as I passed by, my hand up. He waved. I got another nod from her. Real cool cat, totally composed. I don't know if you could be topped that. She was that good. I went back to my side of town and had a hard time getting to sleep, but I finally did. The next day at work, the new guy was in there early, stalking. When he saw me, he gave me dap. Our hands smacking together sounded good in an empty restaurant. How'd last night go? He asked me. It went. You? It was good. Was at the gym for a couple hours. My old lady ended up just crashing at her coworkers. She was out so late working. Huh, I said. She's a hard worker. Maybe works too hard. I hope we can go on vacation soon. She deserves one. Yeah, I said, rubbing my chin. You okay, Levy? He asked me. I looked up at him. He was a lot taller than me, a lot younger too, fresh face, full of optimism and hope. I realized he still had plenty of time. I nodded to him. Yeah, I'm good. Let me get started on side work. He smiled and turned back, stocking the wine. I sighed. Then I draped my black button up on the back of a chair and started setting up the restaurant.
All right. What is going on with that couple? Man. Yeah. I like those. I like the kind of the idea of the mystique of the guy who doesn't hang out. It's kind of like, what's up with this guy? Is he's different? Does he think he's better than me? And how that kind of carries into the bar after too. That line about if any of us were missing, we were almost jealous. I remember that feeling.
Yeah. It's a weird culture to be in, right? Being like, a barfly, I guess, and almost feeling like you are supposed to be there, like you owe something to this place, and when you're missing, people are like almost incredulous in a way. But I've realized, through life and just talking to people that, that's as normal as it feels to be a part of that. People really, it's like any kind of subculture, I think maybe, where it's like people don't think that you can just exist there. Like I was talking to a chef one time and he was just like, anybody who just goes to a bar by themselves, like they got to be like an alcoholic. And I was like, that's such a crazy thing to say. Because, on one hand, like, yeah, maybe, but also like, it can be a club just like anything else, it could be like, you spend your time at a bowling alley, you spend your time in a book club, you could spend your time, playing a sport. But yeah, that being said, it's a different type of world, and I like to show as many worlds as possible in this book.
Yeah. It also that I remember kind of a similar attitude from coming up in the punk scene. Like people are going there to be around the other people at the show more than they're going to see the band.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, I remember that world for sure too. And a lot of times people would just roll up without even knowing who's playing, I mean, if you knew who was playing, extra points. But yeah, you just wanted to be a part of a scene, you know? So
Yeah. 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 You going to the show? Yeah. Who's playing it anyway? Tell me about having this kind of connection to a place, to, you know, either as an employee of a restaurant or like as a regular at a bar. Like, how is that formed? What kind of relationship can that even be? You know, if you're working somewhere, it can feel kind of cruel sometimes, but you can also feel like it's part of you.
oh yeah, big time. I mean, you hear this all the time, and I, you know, I don't know how this is so much in other uh types of industry, but you hear this all the time in restaurants where an owner or somebody who's giving you the pep talk wants to say, well, we're a family here.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, you think that's such a great thing to hear because, you know, I mean, as human beings, we all, you know, unless you're just really that lone wolf, a lot of us do want to be a part of a family. You know what I mean? Higher frequencies depending on where you are with your own individual fucked up family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so especially if, you know, a person who's moved around a lot like myself, you get hired into a restaurant or something like this, and that's where you're spending your time besides your home, or, you know, wherever it is that you choose to go after you get off work. And these people, for all intents and purposes, do become sort of like a family unit. You do have to depend on these people. You do have to trust these people in some type of measure. So, you know, for better or worse, and trust me, it can get worse. Like, you know, you form these relationships, and you almost have to teach yourself to be realistic with your expectations of this quote unquote family you're becoming a part of, because you can begin to uh, put those expectations on these people, and that's where you can get into trouble. Because at the end of the day, you'll find out they're not your family, and you know, you can't really fire your family. I mean, you can say, I'm just not going to come home for Christmas anymore, or whatever it is that you want to do. But, you know, your mother's always going to be your mother. Your brother's always going to be your brother. These people that you're working with, you know, you'll find out they won't always be there for you. So that can, I mean, some of them can always be there for you. Some of them will be your best man or become your wife, or, you know, I mean, and then that brings whole other problems into your life, or solutions. It's crazy. So I don't know
Yeah,
if I answered your question, but
you did. Yeah, I've definitely seen that where like a breakup in the back of the house means that we need to hire somebody new. Somebody quit.
woo!
Yep.
Yeah.
I saw a funny I saw like a tweet or something last year that was like, the boss says we're like a family here, and the response was, so you mean that we're dysfunctional and abusive? Okay.
Exactly,
Yeah.
100% bullseye. That's it. It's really, when it comes down to it, it's almost a manipulation tool. You
I
know,
agree.
it's like this is how we're gonna get you to feel some type of loyalty or like obligation to this place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's even more so, I feel like, outside of California. You know, you go somewhere where, like, you know, people, you know, this is a, kind of a controversial take, but you know, in a lot of parts of this country, you know, there's the work ethic is something where it's like, okay, this is a defining point. Like, this is something that shows who I am as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And employers will, you know, can take advantage of that. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's kind of different here in California, where it's like, no, I'm obligated to a 30-minute break, or I'm only going to work 6 hours, or this, that, and the third. And it's like, it's a funny thing to look at. But that being said, I probably do. I probably would say I come from that old school mentality as far as our industry, where it's like, you know, I come into work to work, and
Mm-hmm.
if that takes me 8 hours and busting my ass the whole time, then like that's who I am, you know. Yeah.
I was talking to a friend who's from the Midwest who moved out here right around when I did, and yeah, we're kind of with you. Like it seems like the expectations for employees are often lower here in LA. And you mentioned moving around a lot, and you kind of, that leads into another question I had, is that like, so a lot of your stories, they touch on service industry and restaurant culture, and they're set in kind of smaller or medium-sized cities that have like a vibrant restaurant and bar culture. You know, we got Austin, we got New Orleans, we got Philly. How does it feel to be writing about these places from Los Angeles? Like, I don't know if it's me, but it feels like restaurant culture in that way, like, isn't as prevalent here as it is in, say, Austin or New Orleans. And by restaurant culture, I mean like the people who actually work in restaurants. It feels like there's more of a focus on it in those other places.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I could be off base here. It could just be me.
No, man. You're actually really on point with that, because you know, I remember when I first moved here, I would get asked a lot while I was working, you know, and you can get asked this in any place, because there's still people that just think that like working in a restaurant or a bar is supposed to just be like your side hustle. You know what I mean? People still think that like, oh, you must just be supporting yourself to get through college, or you must be working on getting this, or you know, if you're in LA, it's like, oh, you must be an actor, a musician, or some type of artist. And it's like, I am an artist, I am a writer, but I am like a bartender, you know? I do work in this industry. It's something that I've done for over 15 years. It's something that I'm good at. It's something that I care about. And whenever I'd get asked that question when I first moved out here, I'd be like, you know, they'd be like, so what else do you do? And I'm like, no, I'm a bartender. This is what I do. And they'd be like, oh shit, we've never fucking met anybody like you. You know?
Right.
And that was always kind of, you know, I mean, you ask anybody in this industry, that's always kind of a demeaning question, even if it is your side hustle, you know, and then you know, you have to decide on whether you want to tell this stranger or not, like what you're actually trying to do in your life. And, you know, and a lot of people will, because they feel like they got to justify themselves and prop themselves up. And, or the other side of that is people get defensive and, you know, maybe flip on you for that. So I would advise people not to lead in with asking, you know, what else it is that you do. Working in those other cities that you named, though, man, there's such a culture for it. And especially some places, like some higher end places, or if you work at like a popular bar, you tell people where you work, especially if like you're a person in the industry and you're going out, right? If I work at this place and then I go to some other bar or something, and they'd be like, oh, you know, in this culture, we gain a sense to see of who has the etiquette, right? And if you display that, they're like, okay, you must be service industry also. And then you say, yeah, I work here. And it's some cool place. And they're like, oh shit, I love that place. And then it's like, okay, you know, I got status now, I got clout. I might even be some type of low-level celebrity. You know, I've worked at some spots where it's just like, you tell people you work here and they're like, oh my God, let's give this guy a free shot. Like, you know, how can I get the hookup at your place? Like this, that, and the third. And, you know, that makes you feel good for sure. Those places, you know, especially somewhere like Philly, New Orleans, those are like, you know, places where like service industry are very, very important. They are a part of the city. They're part of the whole ecosystem. And you have more people doing that type of work there than are doing a lot of other things. And it really gives you a straight connection into the city, because especially like when I lived in New Orleans, I would tell people all the time, like, you know, tourists coming into town, like, you know, they'd be asking you questions at some point, I'd be like, this is what you're supposed to do. You know, you talk to your bartender, you talk to your server, whatever, and you ask them questions. They're going to have all the answers for you. They're going to give you the keys to the city. They're going to give you the places that you want to go, and the place is specifically tailored to you too, right? Because it's like, you know, you only become a regular of a bar or a restaurant if it's your scene, right? So
Yeah.
you know, like you, if you're into, you know, punk, I'm not going to tell you to go to a sports bar. I'm going to tell you to go to the bars that you're going to be into, the scene that you're going to fit into. And being in the service industry, you get to know what those places are, and then you can share that wealth with people.
Yeah, you're like a concierge.
Exactly.
I think you really touched on that about in LA, that yeah, like a lot of the wait staff are actors. I remember I moved here, it was like, why is every single like waiter or waitress amazing looking? Oh yeah, they're all trying to be on TV.
Exactly.
And I've made that like side hustle mistake before, because I was working at startups and people even had like a side hustle there. And I remember I met a dude who worked at Google, and I was kind of like, yeah, but what do you really do? And he's like, bro, I work at Google. Like, what the fuck else am I going to do? I'm not trying to like write a book on the side. And I'm, you know, and I felt like I was kind of projecting my own artist POV on this tech bro. We didn't end up hanging out too much, but that was a lesson learned for sure. Yeah. So I feel like a lot of your stories, they hinge on a moment when one character's perception of the other one shifts. You know, I'm thinking about like the code switching kitchen worker who talks one way with his boss, and the boss sees him with one of his black coworkers.
Yeah,
we have that like white Airbnb-er who gets robbed. I don't know, what attracts you to those moments?
That was something I specifically wanted to do with this book. I had an idea before I even had all the stories that I wanted to just write a book based off of this idea that I had, where I was like, I want to, and just hear me out with this, but because sure. this is the core but very primal, stripped down idea. And that was, I wanted to write a book where I hurt a lot of my friends.
Hurt or heard?
Hurt.
Like, okay.
Yeah. and so what I mean by that is like, I wanted to write a book of stories about moments where you see that life isn't black or white. It's not, you know, good or bad. It's not these one way or the other type things, you know, where it was this whole idea was based on me as a person growing up and realizing that people are just humans and we're all capable of mistakes. We're all fallible. And moments that happen in life where people maybe don't do the quote unquote right thing. Mm-hmm. And does that make them a good or bad person? Or does that just make them a person trying to live in this world, you know? Because, you know, as my own human being, I do try to do the right thing, but that's just according to my code, right?
Yeah.
But then also there's been a lot of moments as I've become an adult where I've had to be like, you know, and this is a line that I take from my favorite, the best television show of all time, The Wire. You know, Bunk goes, there you go, giving a fuck when it ain't your turn to give a fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Like that line, I remember hearing that as a kid in college, and I thought it was cool, but I didn't get it yet. And then as I watched that show continuously throughout my life, it revealed itself in life, you know? And I was like, wow, you know, I can't, every time I see something that I don't agree with or something that like, you know, I think is one way or the other, or, you know, putting judgment on people. These are things that are going to can hinder you or hurt you or give you unnecessary strife. And so when I say, going back to like, I wanted to write some stories that hurt my friends, it's not like I wanted to like physically or mentally hurt them. It was kind of a thing of just being like, showing somebody a mirror, because I think we all have to take a look at ourselves sometimes when we're out in this world being like, pointing the finger or dishing out judgment. And I've been pretty bad about that myself in life, and I'm trying to get better. And I think that we all try to get better about it in life, if we're doing our due diligence. But yeah, that was my idea behind this. And so going to that moment where things kind of shift, like you say, yeah, I just, these weren't even all things that like I came up with. These could be just an idea of something that I heard somebody telling a story about, or something I saw in a movie, and I just wanted to take the moment, stretch it out, and see who would relate to it.
Sure. Yeah, it seemed like it's almost like a moment where, yeah, I guess we're like one person's perception of another person's shifts. And I even was thinking maybe that like dovetailed with a lot of the like mixed race identities in the book from from your main characters. That's like a big thread in the book. And sometimes it's even like the way that these characters are being perceived. Do you see that type of like racial identity perception going along with this social stuff? Do they work alongside each other?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are stories where, I talk about race, and then there's stories where I don't. So, I never want to do it unnecessarily. There are times where it just matters, and there's times where it doesn't. It's times where sometimes, like the story that I just read, it was just, that story was about a guy looking at a couple, and that was it. You didn't need to know anything else, really. But then there's stories like that story you mentioned where the guy's at work, and he's talking one way with his coworker and talks another way with his boss, and you kind of have to bring race into something like that. It's really kind of a thing of like, another theme in the book is just multiple worlds, where it's like, me and you, we're mixed people. So right out the gate, having nothing to do with how we dress, having nothing to do with what music we listen to, anything else, we're already two worlds.
Yeah.
Right? And then as you go through life, you begin to have multiple worlds. And but the fact that me and you already start off with two, really actually three, we only think it's two in the beginning. And then as we go throughout life, and that's been the cool thing about actually meeting you and reading your stuff. And I want to do that with my book too. It's like, growing up, I never read anything by mixed people. It was only either white, Black, Asian, indigenous. You didn't have a lot of stories where it was mixed. And when you did, it was, in my opinion, a lot of times really tragic. So yeah, I try to, show that in my book, and I want to show it in tragic ways, but also like funny ways, and sometimes scary ways, and sometimes whatever ways, just all the ways.
Yeah, it doesn't feel woe is me in your book. And I thought that was cool. It is hard to, it can be, having an identity like ours can be complicated. So there's like a big question is how do you talk about that and even hash that out on the page without having it sound too tragic mulatto-ish, too woe is me. Yeah. Do you have any tips for somebody who might be interested in exploring this identity in a fresh way, or in a way that isn't just going to that like Nella Larson passing, tragic mulatto, she's got to die at the end type of
Oh man,
narrative.
yeah, right. That's like such the trope. I mean, I picked up on that in college, and I actually wrote something about it where I was just like, why do these characters always got to die? But yeah, I mean that's just classic like bucking against this the stereotype, and I encourage that, and I guess the only way, from my experience, is to just seek that out in life, seek out people that, aren't doing the same thing, seek out people that, and it's not easy to do, but it is out there, and you do find them, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be exactly you. It can be like a white or a black person that's just trying to be different, and that's enough a lot of times. You find your tribe. I do believe that. I feel like you just spend a life searching for that, and you can get lucky. And yeah, that's what I would say. I encourage people to just keep looking for people who have a like mind.
Cool. Yeah, I feel like things are changing for the better in terms of like culture and taste. I remember when I was coming up, I'm in my mid 40s, and it was kind of like, it was weird to be, if you were black and you like rock music, or if you're white and you like rap music.
Yeah,
and that was something I was kind of drawn to, because it was like people that were crossing cultures, and that feels way less unusual now, and I think that's wonderful. So yeah, the book, like, and I noticed it, like, race doesn't really come into play until, I don't know, maybe like 6, 7, 8 stories into the book, when we have the one about the guy who finds out that his half brother has been using a white sounding name on his resume.
Yeah.
That was like a gut punch. And it just added this whole other like layer to what was going on in the book. I was curious about your decision to delve into this subject matter later in the book, not at the beginning. Like we kind of establish the like restaurant culture, service industry stuff, and then we get race a while later. Why did you hold out on us?
Oh shit. That's a good question. I don't know that I felt like I was like deliberately holding out, but it's kind of more of a thing where I'm like, I feel like maybe it was one of those things where I did it subconsciously, but in a organic way, like I feel like if I look back on my life, I grew up on military bases.
Mm-hmm.
And when you grow up on a military base, and this is something that I'm actually pretty grateful for, you grow up on a military base, everybody's the same sort of, you're all just military. It's not like that in America, I feel like. In America, like, pretty early if you're black or you're white or or what you are, and that begins to shape your life and your way of thinking immediately. And I don't know that I did it on purpose, but I know that in my life, I started off just like as a person, and I had to learn these things. And once I, just started going to like an American public school, that's where I was like, oh shit, like, because I'm this skin color, I'm supposed to act this type of way, I mean, I hear you with, I mean, with, being a certain shade of skin, like that means that like, oh, it's unusual for you to listen to this kind of music, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. I grew up not knowing that. So when I was informed of these things, by the time of, I was almost done with middle school, about to start high school, it's kind of late to learn those type of things, And so then you're kind of almost catching up. So, yeah, I guess I just wanted to be like, hey, like, let's just sink into some stories. And when it does come up, you're going to almost feel like how I felt, coming into American school, being like, oh, I'm not supposed to wear Vans. I got to wear like some fly pairs of, Jordans or Reebok or whatever the school was, fashion fad was. And yeah, I guess that's where that might've came from.
Yeah, it's like the story, it kind of naturally mirrors your own experience, or the table of contents.
Yeah.
Cool. And it looks like we're being told we have time for one more question. So we both have some experience in Richmond. I went to high school and college there, and I know you maybe went to VCU and then stayed for a while after.
Yeah.
So during the height of the pandemic, I know we're still in that shit. A friend of mine from high school, from Open High in Richmond, was going through a divorce. And I swear this turns into like a kind of happy story. But she was taking these long walks through Richmond, like in the Fan District and Randolph and along the river. And she was posting all these pictures of it on Instagram. And it low key became like one of my favorite parts of being stuck at home, because it was transporting me back there. And I'd be like, I remember replying to one of her stories, like, I definitely took a piss in that alley in 2001. And it made me miss the place. So I'm curious, what do you miss about Richmond?
Oh man, I love Richmond. It's such a great city to like become a person in. Because it is a city, but it's not too big. I spent a lot of time just walking around, and I just feel like it's got so much to make you like a whole person, It's diverse, it's got good food, it's pretty, it's got a lot of history, it's got a lot of good and bad things, you can get into trouble there. I mean, you can get in trouble anywhere, but like it's just got so much, and there's good people there. And they want to make a life there. So I still have a lot of friends that live there, and they're doing really well, and they're raising families, and starting their businesses, running their businesses, and I'm really proud of all of them. And it's a place I feel like I can always go back to. And I just think it's a really underrated, awesome city. When I lived there, it was always supposed to be like, there was always articles coming out, Richmond's going to be the next big thing. But that's not the mentality to have. Just let Richmond be Richmond. So That's what I love about that place.
Cool. Thank you, X. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, thank you too. I really appreciate it. Always good to talk to you, man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for such a fun and sort of nostalgic conversation. Had a lot of nostalgia to it, and it was fun to listen to. So thank you again to our guests, XC Atkins and Chris L. Terry. You can grab a copy of Desperado Days from SKYLIT Books or online at skylitbooks.com. Thank you again to our guests, and we hope to see you all in the store soon.
Thank you so much, Nat.
Thanks,
Chris.
y'all.
Thank you for listening to the SKYLIT Books podcast series. Please don't forget to visit our website at skylitbooks.com and make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more author talks and bookseller conversations. You can find us on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Stay safe and healthy, and we hope to see you back in our store soon.